Hi, I'm George Norrie, and welcome to our Coast to Coast AM YouTube channel. Have fun, tell your friends, and share us with everyone. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Coast to Coast AM's mobile app. And always remember to log on to our website at coasttocoastam.com for daily articles, the best paranormal information, and all you need to know about your favorite guests. And now you can become a Coast Insider directly through the Coast mobile app. We welcome our international listeners and even offer a free 2-week trial. So don't delay. Become an insider today. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you. Cullen Saunders is a self-employed graphic designer, born in 1958 in Coventry, England, and grew up in the Midlands in the United Kingdom. Cullen has spent his entire career as a technical design draughtsman, and his skills earned him an AutoCAD User of the Year award back in 1992 while working. His encounter with a triangle UFO along with his family back in 1999 totally changed his view of the world that we live in today, and he wrote the book Triangular UFOs of the United Kingdom. Colin, welcome to the program.
Hello, George. Good morning.
Looking forward to this. Then we'll get into this experience that led to the book Triangular UFOs of the United Kingdom.
Okay. So, it was my mother-in-law's birthday that day. She was 72 years old. We went down to pick her up in my wife's car. Now, my wife was driving, and my mother-in-law sat in the passenger seat in the front. And myself and my daughter was 12 at the time, we were in the rear of the car. Now, my brother-in-law lives next door to my mother-in-law, and he was coming with us as well we were going out for a bar meal to celebrate my mother-in-law's birthday. Now, he's got a Range Rover, and he's got a French partner. Now, her grandparents had come over from France, and they were coming out with us for the meal as well. So the two vehicles, we set off, and we went to a small village called Paleton, which is in Warwickshire, close to the Foss Way. Paleton's a really small village. It's got one pub there, the White Lion, and that's where we went for the bar meal. So we had the bar meal. Nothing exciting happened on the way. And I'd just like to say, well, I've never been involved with UFOs, so we wasn't looking for what happened next. It just came out of the blue. So we come to leave the pub, and it was 9:50 p.m. And I remember we got into the car with my wife driving and mother-in-law in the front. And I was in the back, and I looked around as we pulled off, and I could see the old French lady struggling to get into the Range Rover.
Yeah.
So we went off first, and we expected them to catch us up on the way. So we went through the country lanes, and it's pitch black here, and we come up to a road called the Foss Way. Now, the Foss Way is an old Roman road. It's built on ley lines, apparently, because people are interested in ley lines. And it joins the A5, the Watling Street, which is another Roman road, and they join at a place called High Cross, which is about 3 or 4 miles from the village that we've been to, Paleton. So when we come up to the Foss Way, somebody mentions, we're turning on to the Foss now. And as a joke, my daughter said, there's been talk of Headless Horseman down here. And we all laughed and said we'd keep our eyes open for him, not expecting to see anything. And then we turned onto the Foss Way. Again, there's no lights on the Foss Way. It's just total darkness. But there, half a mile away, by the side of the road, was some lights flashing away. And straight away, it obviously caught our attention. These lights were absolutely the brightest lights I've ever seen. I've been to quite a few fireworks displays and quite a few air shows as well. I've never seen any lights quite as bright as this. They were mainly red lights with a bit of white mingled in, and we were all saying, what on earth can that be? It's too low to be an airplane. There's too many lights for airplanes and helicopters. It looked like there should be like warning lights on top of a metal pylon, to warn aircraft, that sort of thing. But there's nothing down the Foss Way. We've been up and down there for years. So we're all talking about it, all excited. We drove towards these lights, and we drove more or less underneath them. We stopped. They were 100 feet away from us. I mean, they were jolly close. Well, like you could hit it with a cricket ball, but there was no craft at this point. It was just light. So we stopped the car, and like I say, they were 100 feet away from us. Now, as an analogy, I always base that distance on the fact I've steered my friend's narrow boat around the Asper Canal, and that's a 70-foot long boat, and I've steered it through tight canal bridges, etc. So when I say 100 feet, I mean 100 feet. Like I say, you couldn't hit it with a cricket ball. They were that close. Now, there were 4 big red lights at the back. Now, these lights were at an angle to the Earth. They weren't parallel with the Earth. They were tilted at an angle of about 30 degrees. So I stared at these 4 lights, and one in particular, the highest one of the tilt, and I could see another little red light underneath those 4 lights, which looked sort of different. It looked like it was burning like a Roman candle, and it had got a bit of mist around it as well. So as we're staring at these lights, I'm thinking, this is unbelievable. I don't know what we're looking at. The big red light that I concentrated on had got like a grid pattern on the surface. It looked like a stop lens on the traffic light. But you could see that the crisscross effect was a side effect of the light that was coming out of it. Something along the lines of Newton's law of ring interference. It wasn't manufactured plastic cover with crisscross.
So you saw a lot of detail on this thing.
Yes, as I say, I did, and I've thought about it every day for 24 years now. And because of my training, I was trying to take in as much information as possible. So as we're staring at the light, as I'm staring at this one particular light, I noticed that the sky is starting to ripple, and it's rippling around the lights. And I'm thinking, oh my word, it's not just lights on their own. There's something there. There's something around the lights themselves, holding the lights together. And as soon as I had that thought, this craft decloaked and materialised. It was just like a Klingon starship in Star Trek.
Yeah.
It just decloaked in front of us and became a metallic object. And we were looking at the rear of it, and the rear 2 wingtips, I noticed fluffy white clouds appeared around the tips of the wings. And then, as I noticed that, the craft then rose in the air. The nose rose in the air. Now, the craft was so close to the ground that if it had tilted from the middle, I would say it would have struck, the rear end would have struck the ground. It was that low. But the rear end stayed where it was, and the nose floated up in the air. Now, the movement, George, was unbelievable. It was like a submarine underwater. The way it floated, it just looked so peculiar. And as it floated up in front of us like a horse rearing up, we could see the top surface of the craft. Now, this is unusual. In the last 24 years, I think I've only come across one case where somebody has seen the top of a triangle. Everybody sees the bottom of the triangle as they're flying over the top of them. It's very rare when you get to see the actual top surface of the triangle. Now, as the triangle floated up in front of us, it looked like it was alive. It looked organic, this thing. The surface had got liquid on the surface. It looked like the liquid was running up and down the surface.
Was it pulsing, Colin? Was it pulsing?
No, it wasn't pulsing. No, the rear lights that we stared at were pulsing, but very quick, like in a digital fashion.
Yeah.
They weren't analog. They weren't going down and coming on again. They were rapidly sort of flashing, if you like. Now, this liquid on the surface, the best way I can describe it, it looked like a lake of water at night with the moon shining on it, with slight ripples and the moonlight's catching the top of the ripples. That's the sort of effect that we was looking at. Now, on top of that liquid, there was these girders, these beams that were interlocking. They looked like an old-fashioned maze in an English country garden. They were all like turning through 90 degrees and locking within each other. And there were like symmetrical patterns on both sides of the craft on top of this liquid surface. How
big would you estimate it to be?
I estimate it to be the size of a bus, so that's around 30 metres wide.
Not ridiculously huge.
Not yet.
That's right.
We will get. So as we stared at this craft, I'm thinking 3 thoughts came straight into my mind. The first one was, oh my God, aliens do exist. The second one was that abductions obviously do take place. And the third one, this explains mysteries from history that we don't understand, like the pyramids and things like that. Those 3 thoughts came into my mind straight away. Now, there is a bit more to it, and we'll get round to that shortly, if you don't mind, because there was some high strangeness that took place as well.
Sure.
So as we're staring at the craft as it tilts up, and the feeling was amazing. It was like meeting God, even though I'm not religious. It's the only way I could describe it. And it wasn't frightening at all, not for me or my mother-in-law.
And you weren't scared?
Not at all, no, quite the opposite. It was almost like a feeling of love and affection towards it. It was just beautiful to see, and it was such a revelation. It was a paradigm shift in my way of thinking in an instant. It just happened just like that. Everything I've learned went out the window because now we're looking at a really advanced technology. So now my wife, who was a very sensible person, she decides to put the hazard flashing lights on and to reverse into a gateway, which is more or less underneath this craft. But as she pulled forward to start reversing, a large hedge blocked the view, and I thought to myself, oh no, if it's going to go, it's going to go now. So she reversed into the hedgeway, we jumped out of the car, and sure enough, it had gone. There was nothing there. There was no smell of any aviation fuel. There was no thermal signature. There was nothing. So we stood there looking around, and in the distance, there's this craft going away with 4 big red lights on the back of it, just like the one we'd seen by the side of the road. Except the one that was going away from us was huge. That was a football pitch-sized craft. 4 big red lights at the back, huge wings that went out, and on the end of each wing there was a white light which shone the surface up. So the surface of the craft was lit up, but from underneath, I would imagine you wouldn't be able to see those lights. You wouldn't see anything. When we watched that craft going around, I said, there it is, look. It's changed from a small one into a big one. I said that because I knew nothing about UFOs. I thought this thing had somehow morphed into a larger craft.
Were there other witnesses, Colin?
Just my wife, my daughter.
That was it. There wasn't like a whole group of people out there or anything.
No, because we're in the middle of nowhere and it's pitch black and there's no one around, there's no traffic. And it's deadly silent when we get out of the car. It's what we call the Oz effect. You could hear a pin drop. There was nothing. We stood there just absolutely gobsmacked looking at this big craft going away. Then the traffic starts up again on the road. You know, cars are coming up and down. And I think air traffic starts up again. But there'd been nothing at all during the sighting. So we get back into the car, drive home, and then hit Mother home, which to our surprise, the Range Rover is already there. And the French people are not only home, they're inside having a cup of tea, so they've obviously been back some time. That was 9:50 when we saw the craft. We checked our watch. We don't know exactly what time we left the pub from the bar meal.
Was it making any kind of sound or hum?
No, none at all.
Nothing.
At all. We couldn't hear anything. But that's above the noise of the car engine. It was an old Ford Fiesta.
Yeah.
Maybe if we got out in time, we might have heard some humming. That is described by a lot of people. But to us, no, we didn't hear anything at all. No noise whatsoever. So that was basically the sighting. When we got back to the mother-in-law's, we dropped her off. I sat in the back of the car, sort of feeling really blown away by it all. I didn't even want to get out and talk to the others about what we'd seen. I just felt quite sort of chilled out and relaxed and just wanted to sit in the back of the car. We went back home and straight away we started doing some drawings. My daughter and myself, we drew the craft with the beams on the surface. My wife, who had been driving, never seen the craft materialise. She only saw the lights. Now, she drew, I had to draw what she'd seen, and she drew 3 red lights in a perfect equilateral triangle. Now, that is so strange because there's no way that we could have seen that from the aspect ratio that we were looking at the triangle. All we saw, especially as it was invisible at the time when we drove towards it, all we saw was a multitude of lights all mingled in. Now, over the years, I think I've figured out why the craft was tilted up. It was tilted towards us. The bottom was tilted up. That would give us more of a view of all of the lights in the craft, even though the craft was invisible. Do you know what I mean? So if the craft had been level with the earth, we wouldn't have had such a bright display of light. So I believe the craft tilted up.
Colin, let's jump back into the story here of this sighting. How did the object finally disappear?
Like I said, when we were parked next to the object, the craft cloaked in front of us. But then as my wife pulled forward, it blocked her view. So we didn't actually see the craft disappear. Because by the time she reversed back into the gateway, it chose that particular moment to disappear when we couldn't see it actually leave.
Was there any kind of abduction case or anything that happened to you, all of you?
There was something strange happened to me, which we'll get back into in a short while. Just before the break, we was talking about the lights that my wife had drawn. She drew 3 red lights in a perfect equilateral triangle. Now, there's no way we could have seen that from the side of the road and from approaching the lights and the small triangle. I have a theory that what she saw was the underneath of the large triangle. Do you remember I said once we got out of the car, there was this huge craft going away with 4 big red lights on the back, and I thought it was the smaller craft had grown into a bigger craft. But now, on reflection after all these years, I believe that was the mothership that the smaller one went back to. And looking at the trajectory of the large craft, there's a good chance it passed over our car whilst we were looking at the small one. So it was almost like an ambush. The little one was there. It was tilted up to show us all of the lights. It was right next to the road. We stopped the car in front of it. Now, I think there's a possibility at that point the large triangle came over the car, which is why my wife drew 3 red lights in a perfect triangle.
So the smaller one was about the size of a bus, right?
That's right, yes. And I'm guessing the larger one was the size of a football pitch.
Ah, that's good size.
Yeah, it was the biggest flying craft I've ever seen, and I've been to quite a few air shows over the years, both in Germany and the UK. It was a massive craft, just silently floating away. It was quite incredible. So what I decided to do then was to make a model of the craft. Initially, I drew it on the CorelDRAW, did some lovely drawings, and I printed those out, made some paper versions, and then I decided to make a more solid model. So I got some wooden dowel in and created a shape, a triangular shape, and I put the images that I printed on top of this model. It was a bit flimsy, you could poke your finger through it, but it was a proper 3D model. It was quite exciting.
You were almost obsessed with building this model, weren't you?
Absolutely. I mean, it came at the perfect time because I got 3 members of staff working at home. So I let them run the business whilst I was in the shed outside making this craft, or making several crafts, first drawing it, then the first paper craft, and then the first wooden craft, the wooden-based craft. Now, that craft, the last time I seen it was inside my van that I bought. I bought a small van for moving garments around.
Yeah.
That was part of the driveway of my house, and it was broken into one night, and the stereo was taken out. It was an old cassette player. It wasn't worth anything. And when I took the vehicle to be repaired from the friend who sold me the vehicle, he said it had been professionally broken into. He said they made a great job of it, and he couldn't understand why somebody with those skills would break into a van and just steal a cassette player. Now, when I came to look for my model, it was gone. It wasn't in the van. Whoever took the cassette player also took the model. And I never did find that model again. So whether they were looking for that in particular or whether they just saw it and took it, it would mean nothing to anybody. So whether I'm just being paranoid, but somebody did say once that just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not after you. So that model disappeared. But then I decided to build another one. This time I went to town a bit more. I put some plywood on top of a dowling frame. And I also bought some flashing lights and a battery pack and a switch and wired it all up. And now I've got a model that has got the actual lights in it as well.
And you were doing all this, Colin, from memory?
Yes, all from memory, yeah. And all done straight away before the memory faded of what we'd seen that night. Now, I got in touch with a UFO magazine over here. They put me in touch with a gentleman called Omar Fowler. Now, Omar sent me some documents, and in the documents there was a picture of a triangle in Belgium in the 1980s, I think it was. And the underneath of the triangle, the young guy who's seen it, I've got these lines in relief interlocking on the surface, exactly the same as we got on the surface of our craft. Now, we only saw the rear end and the top, but it seemed to me that the Belgium sighting with the same beams underneath must have been the same craft or same series of craft. So I used the Belgium sighting to create the bottom of our craft. So when you look at my finished model that I've got, and the final model is a 3D printed model, we never saw the underneath. So the underneath is just purely based on the Belgium sighting. So there may not have been beams underneath our craft. It may have been a flat surface, I don't know. But it did seem logical to me to use the Belgium sighting to make the complete craft, basically. So I built this second model. I managed to get onto television with that and into a few magazines and talk to people. And I remember in the early days when I used to take it out on a briefcase, it used to make me shake with excitement when I seen it, taking me back to that night. So then I went and did a few presentations of that few UFO conferences.
Were you becoming pretty well known by that time?
Only within UFO circles, yes.
Okay.
I think with the advent of Facebook and social media, that's when things started to take off a bit more.
You met the late Bud Hopkins, who was an expert in alien abductions, didn't you?
I did, yes. I met quite a few people, actually. It was back in the early 2000s. Now, we used to have a UFO magazine. It was run by a guy called Graham Birdsall and Russell Callahan. The two of them used to produce a fantastic magazine, but more importantly, some fantastic UFO conferences in Leeds. Now, it was there that I met and chatted with Stanton Freeman, Dr. Roger Lear, Stephen Greer, and more importantly, Bud Hopkins.
Yeah, great people.
Now, before I go into the conversation I have with Bud Hopkins, we need to go back to the night of the sighting and talk about the high strangeness, the strange things that occurred to myself, but not to the other people. Now, what I've talked about so far is what I call the nuts and bolts of the sighting. The strange part of the sighting I didn't really talk about for 20 years because it just sounded crazy. And I'm an engineer, and I found it all very weird what took place. And I can imagine that other people would think that I was losing the plot, that I was making it up because it's just so strange what I'm about to say. But I've realised now, especially over the last 4 years, that paranormal activity and UFOs go in hand in hand. And I'll explain the reason why. So if we go back to that night, the 31st of March, 1999, at 9:50 p.m., as the craft tilted up in front of us, like I say, like a submarine in the water, the three thoughts came into my mind, and then, the best way I can describe it, it was like somebody got a pair of binoculars and put them in front of my eyes. Because all of a sudden, I could see the surface close up, and I could see these lines interlocking that were turning through 90 degrees, these girders on top of the liquid surface. That was the first view. Then there was a second view. That was the big round nose at the top. And I was so close to it that I couldn't see the beams on the surface anymore. All I could see was this big round nose. And it was beautiful. The way it had been manufactured was absolutely incredible. I was in awe of the engineering. And then there was a third view, and that was a side view of the craft up near the nose. Now, it showed the centre of the triangle from a side view, which was like a white core, milky white core, and the top and the bottom of the triangle fitted onto this central white core. And when they fitted the top and the bottom, it was rounded over like a hovercraft skin onto this white central core that was running around the craft. Now, where it was joined, top and bottom, there was no welding, there were no seams, no nuts and bolts, no rivets. The way it had been manufactured was absolutely incredible. The next thing I remember is being in the car saying, "Stop, I want to get out, I want to get out." I wanted to get next to the craft. I think me and my mother-in-law wanted to get on board. And that's when my wife pulled forward and the craft disappeared.
Now, when you say it disappeared, Colin, like blinked out or sped off?
We don't know because the hedge was in the way, so we didn't see. We didn't see whether it decloaked or cloaked itself again, or whether it shot off, or whether it went back to another ship.
But it was gone. It was gone quickly, though, wasn't it?
Very quick in that very short space of time that it took us to pull forward and then reverse into the gateway. That short space of time, it just totally disappeared. It was gone. And like I say, it was so quiet you could hear a pin drop.
In your opinion, at this point, do you think they wanted you to see it, the craft?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, a lot of people want to see these crafts, and we get people seeing them at distance, miles away, and see lights in the sky. Very rare do people get to see such a close encounter like we've had. I realise over the years it's one of the closest in the UK that's ever been recorded, certainly probably the most detailed, but I seem to be in the right position to do that. So not only did they wait for us, like a bit like an ambush, and show us the craft close up, they also, I believe, put these images into my mind. Now, I was going to say the next day, I had the conversation with my family, and I was saying I don't know out-of-body experience. I was pretty convinced that's what had took place because I've got this close viewing of the surface, these three images. But I couldn't understand why, if that was the case, why, say, from the front of the nose, I was looking at the big round nose, to the side view of the nose, why I didn't see it long, why it was like three pictures rather than a continuous rolling film as such. So for a few years, I was thinking it was out-of-body experience. And going back to the conferences where I met Bud Hopkins, the conversation I had with Bud, I told Bud about what had occurred. I showed him the model, and I told him I had this out-of-body experience. Now, Bud said to me, no, it wasn't an out-of-body experience. What you had there was 3 images placed in your mind by the aliens on board the craft. Before he got a chance to explore that anymore, this other person put it in, this woman, an Irish woman with a crystal she'd found in the forest. And she's saying, Bob, I found this near the UFO sighting. And Bob, being a gentleman, started chatting with her, and that was the end of my 60 seconds with Bob, basically. So I went off thinking, well, that's an unusual thing, isn't it? Aliens putting images in your mind. I couldn't really take that on board, and I was still clinging to the out-of-body experience, which I found quite comforting, because I was starting to think you could live without your body, that your soul does carry on. And I was quite clinging to that. I thought that was quite nice. But then what happened was, once a friend of mine, he started building some models for me. I got a 3D printer. So I did a presentation on one of these 3D models, and I talked to the group. This was in Birmingham in the UK. And I talked about the close viewing and saying I thought it was an out-of-body experience. Now, the guy there talked about a case where a UFO had landed in the field, and 2 guys were watching it from quite some distance, and they saw these aliens coming out of the craft. Then all of a sudden, one of the aliens projected his face across the field. It was right up in front of this other human guy's face, telling him he shouldn't be there and they had to leave.
Jeez.
Now, I thought that's a similar sort of thing, but not exactly the same as what I experienced.
You didn't see the aliens or whatever they may be, right?
No, I didn't see any aliens at all, unfortunately. Just the craft and the close-up views of the craft. Now, what happened then, after this presentation I did, as coincidences go, within 2 weeks, I had an email, and I put the details in the book. It's the only one I've got in there from America. It was from a guy in Connecticut who's never reported his sighting to MUFON or anybody. He doesn't want anybody to know about it, and I've had to use a pseudonym for his name in the book. Now, what he said to me, basically, his email started off by saying, just like you, I had 3 images placed in my mind with a close encounter with a triangle. So he goes on to explain that he'd seen this triangle, and it came down really close to him, and as he was staring at it, thinking he needs to remember all the details so later on, a bit like myself when we saw our craft, he said he had 3 images placed into his mind, and they were close-up views of the craft. He thinks 2 of them were on the outside, showing like a ball of light or plasma. Another one was the pipes running around the surface. And he thinks the 3rd view was inside the craft. So when I read that email, it suddenly struck me. It was like a eureka moment. It was like, oh my word, Bud Hopkins was correct all along. It was images placed in my mind. It wasn't an out-of-body experience. I've been listening to a lot of work of David Jacobs. He'd interviewed a lot of people who've been on board crafts.
And he believes that the visitations are somewhat nefarious.
Yes, he does, yeah. I might go along with that myself. I don't know. But what I did gather from listening to all of his podcasts and YouTube information was that people receive images, telepathy. I always assumed that telepathy was words, like you'd have a conversation with somebody, but without actually speaking, just through your mind. But he has a lot of reports where people are shown images rather than words. And then it struck me that, an image paints 1,000 words. A picture paints 1,000 words, is what they say. So it would make sense that the aliens on board the craft put 3 images into my mind.
Might they have put an implant in you?
Who knows? Who knows what took place that night? Because I have had a lot of experiences since then and nothing before. So this was the start of a paranormal part of my life.
You've had other encounters?
Not as close as the first one, but I've had some very strange things happen, to the point where I started to write them down with the dates as well. And I put all of these into the book. So it seems that Bud Hopkins was correct. The images were placed in my mind, And the only reason I could think that was done was to build the model. I mean, the final model I've got, the 3D printed model, is an exact copy, as far as I'm concerned, of this ET craft that we seen that night.
Colin, there are some people, ufologists, who believe that these are coming from other planetary systems within our galaxy, our universe. And then there are others who believe that this is an interdimensional situation. Where do you fit in that?
Prior to the break, we were just talking about some of the paranormal things that have happened to me since the UFO encounter. So I'll just touch on one of those because this is the one that changed my mind about the craft and where it was from. So I've been experiencing quite a few strange paranormal experiences, if you like. Not just lights in the sky, but there was quite a few of those. But one particular day, I was out fishing. I love fishing. I'm fishing in a river in a place called Roseley in Leicestershire, fishing on the River Soar. Now I hear what sounds like 4 footsteps, 2 people walking across the field. Now it's quite remote, and sometimes there are some of the farmhands down there shooting. So I thought I'd climb up the bank and let myself be known to the people there because I didn't want them shooting in my direction. So I climbed up the riverbank and I stood there, and there was no one there, but the noise continued, these 4 footsteps. Now they're walking towards me. They're getting closer and closer. And now, I know in the UK, there was some big cats have been released out into the countryside. So I thought it was going to be like a puma or something along those lines. And I was petrified. So in my rod holder, I got an umbrella with a big spike on it that you bang into the ground with a hammer. So I took the big spike for protection, and I thought if it's a cat, what I'm going to do is go back down the riverbank and get it to jump on me and impale it on its own weight. That was my game plan. I was frightened to death. I really was. And this noise is getting louder, and it's coming towards me. But the grass is only like a foot tall, and nothing's moving, and I can't see anything. And whatever it was walked in front of me, like just 4 feet in front of me. It went from left to right, 4 heavy footsteps. It started going away. So then I became a bit brave, and I started shouting and clapping my hands, and I got this metal spike, and I hit the grass to see if there was anything in there. But of course there wasn't. There was nothing. And this noise then just faded away, and I stood there and I thought, that wasn't a big cat. I mean, big cats wouldn't make noise. That was paranormal. That was something that's not here. That's something in another dimension. Now, you can see why for 20 years I didn't talk about this, because people would think you're absolutely nuts. I just stuck to the nuts and bolts of the sighting. I didn't really talk about this weird stuff. So I stood there petrified. And once I realised that what I heard was not actually here, it was some sort of space-time contingency, and it is obvious that these things are only coming since the UFO. It was pretty obvious, George, that day I decided that it was interdimensional, that craft had come from a dimension, and somehow it had left some residue with me. Now, I believe that was from the 3 images that were placed in my mind on the details of the craft. I think that did something to my mind that allowed these other things to come in, because the other 3 members of the car, my wife, my daughter, and my mother-in-law, they were not having any extra experiences like myself. It was just happening to me. So I concluded, because prior to the UFO sighting, I'd had no paranormal experiences at all. For the first 40 years of my life, nothing. Then after the UFO experience, for the first 18 months, 2 years, I was having all sorts of strange things happening.
Sure.
And like I say, the biggest one was this invisible creature down at the riverbank. And like I say, that was the day that I decided that this craft was interdimensional.
And have you changed your mind at all, or you're still sticking with that?
I'm still sticking with that 100%. It's the only explanation. It's the only logical explanation. You know, if we'd sent Apollo to the moon and a little alien had seen the craft and told his mates about it down the pub, and then the Apollo had come back down to Earth, you would not expect that alien to go on to have other sightings and other experiences, because it was just a metallic object from another planet that's come and gone. Now, if that had been a craft from another planet that had managed to travel all these distances, all these light years, then I wouldn't have gone on to have these other experiences. But these other experiences that I had since sighting means for me 100% that these are dimensional. These are not extraterrestrial. Now, when I started writing the book, I was asking people if they had any paranormal experiences as well as UFO experiences. And more people were saying yes than no. So inside my book, there's a whole chapter that's dedicated to UFOs and the paranormal. They do seem to go hand in hand.
Is it possible, though, Colin, that this craft could be earthbound, that maybe it's ours, the United States or China's or Russia's?
No, I believe if it had been an earthbound, if it had been a human-manufactured craft, then I would not have gone on to have the other paranormal experiences. It would have just been a one-off, and eventually maybe you could have told me, convinced me it was man-made. But to be honest, on the night, even when it appeared, you could tell it was not from this world. You just got that feeling. You just knew straight away it was not one of ours. And like I say, if it had been one of ours, I wouldn't have gone on to have these other experiences. And what I'm finding, it's called, they've got a name for it now. They call it the hitchhiker effect. People who are having close encounters go on to have other paranormal experiences as well. And it's becoming more and more common now. Like I said, there's a whole chapter in the book that's dedicated to people who've had other experiences. One of the strange things is that the majority of people, all of them, are saying they've had experiences when they were younger and growing up, seeing ghosts and things, and eventually it culminates in seeing the UFO. Whereas for me, it's been the other way around. It started with the UFO, and then I had these other experiences after the UFO, but nothing prior to the UFO. So it's slightly different to everybody else. They seem to have the experiences first and then the UFO. But like I say, mine was the other way around. Now also, what you'll find in the book, I've got 130 close encounter witnesses that talk about the craft they've seen. Now, every craft is slightly different. These are different sizes, different colours, different lights. I haven't come across two crafts that are exactly the same. So as far as manufacturing of aircraft are concerned, I know from my experience in Sweden, when you build aircraft, you build like from 0 to 75, and you keep them all the same. You don't make any major changes. And then you do from 75 to 150. You don't change every single craft that you make. The logistics would be impossible to try and keep on top of all of that. So to say that these are TR-3Bs, it'd be crazy, because that would mean I'm talking about 130, but I'm just scratched the surface. There's got to be thousands of these things. I mean, worldwide, there must be hundreds of thousands of these craft, and they're not all coming out of Nevada. I'm not saying we haven't back-engineered or tried to emulate these craft, but I'm still of the opinion that the majority of them are ET, rather dimensional rather than extraterrestrial.
Has this episode changed your life, Colin?
It's made me far more spiritual, far more aware of the planet as well. I've always been very green, if you like, but I'm more green than ever. I've also found I've become a bit more emotional. I tend to be quite an emotional person now. If I'm not careful, I can start crying at adverts on the telly. I think I've changed in that respect to become
interesting.
A softer person, if you like.
What about your family? Any change with them?
No, none at all. Unfortunately, my mother-in-law, she passed away a few years ago during COVID.
Yeah.
She died of old age. Strange thing there, when we cleared out her bedroom, in the bottom of the wardrobe, she got loads of newspaper clippings on paranormal stuff, on ghosts and things. Now, she was a very quiet woman. She kept everything to herself. Nobody knew about this. So it would appear that Madge, at some point, has had some sort of an experience in the past. She's never told anybody about it. I've got all those paper cuttings, and when I've got more time, I will sit down and read them all as well.
Let's go to the phones. This rest of this hour is going to go by fast. Let's go to Aaron in Fountain Valley, California, to get us started. Hey, Aaron, go ahead.
Hey, George, how are you doing?
Okay, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, Colin?
Hello.
How are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you. How's yourself?
I had an experience where I had a feeling that I needed to go outside. I went outside, and a craft appeared to me that was like blue and silver and metallic. And I mean, I'm telling you, it telepathically told me to go outside. So I go outside, blue skies, no clouds. You know, I go out there, and this object just appears out of nowhere. And it's a craft, and they are definitely higher dimensional I think the Pleiadian, or they're not extraterrestrial. I don't understand. I don't know where they're from, but that's the experience that I had. It disappeared out of nowhere. I swear that I saw that.
Sounds like a similar episode that you had, Colin, except his was a daytime sighting.
Absolutely, yes. And the telepathy, I hear that so many times. I mean, inside the book, there were people who were talking about they get the message to go out and have a look. You know, they're lying in bed and all of a sudden they'll get a telepathic message to say, go to the window and look out. And sure enough, there's a craft. This happens time and time again. These things, these creatures, who I believe are dimensional, not extraterrestrial, they seem to be very aware of our own psyche, and they can tune into that. And they're just so more advanced than we are. They can, tell you there's going to be a craft there. So I believe that guy 100% what he's saying, that they've told him to go outside and have a look. They seem to choose people that, I did hear once that they choose people who are telepathic because it's easier for them to communicate with somebody who's already telepathic rather than somebody who's not. Whether that's the case or not, I don't know. But it is true to say there's a lot more to this than just an extraterrestrial nuts and bolts craft. That's not what's going on here. These are dimensional, and they are somehow tapping into our own psyche, our own psychology. They seem to know more about us than we know ourselves, to be honest.
And when we hear the word dimensional, Colin, we sometimes don't think it's physical. This was a physical craft you saw, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yes. It had been manufactured. I mean, you could see it had been manufactured.
I mean, if you got up close enough and touched it, you would have felt the object.
Correct, yes. Now, in the book, I have two witnesses who have touched a triangle. They've been that close to a triangle. But they're quite astounding. And if we get a chance, I'll read one of those out to you in a bit.
Are they okay now? They didn't come down with cancer or anything like that?
No, they're fine. Yeah, no problems at all.
Next up, let's go to Stacy in Lathrop, California. Stacy, go ahead.
Hi, George.
Hi,
Stacy. I'd just like to say hello. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you.
I love you so much, and it's so nice to hear Doc Wallach. Been listening to Doc for years. Yeah, I'm truck driving here. I'm a nighttime truck driver, so just got done with Oakland, Bay Area, came back here, and I have about an hour. Thought I'd call because our area was a pretty big hot spot, it feels like, back in the 90s.
It sure was.
You don't hear about, the triangles that were going on. I had an experience with my two brothers and my mother. They were coming home from Modesto, California. We had apartments that we used to maintain for my mom. And my brother had some experience, that month, seeing things in the sky. Anyways, they both yelled at me to come to the car at about 7. It was dusk. Sissy, please get out here, come see this. And to this day, I can remember running out the door, getting to the gate. But after that, I forget. And everybody talked about this huge triangle that was up there. And this was like not dark yet, but yet kind of dark, We lived on a property with a home in the front and a home in the back. And to this day, it just bothers me that I remember remembering it and even talking about it. But all these years later, I cannot see it in my mind's eye. So that's just kind of weird. But I just wanted to share that with you all. And also just wanted to say it was really strange. We don't hear much about the Heaven's Gate and when the Phoenix Lights happened at the same time. Do you think that there was any coincidence with that?
Interesting. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Phoenix Lights episode, call it, of 1997, but they spotted a huge triangular-shaped object. It might have been the same one you found in 1999.
It's a possibility. I've seen the Phoenix Lights, obviously on the internet, on YouTube and that.
Yeah.
I think the lights on the back of that were there were quite a lot of lights, weren't there, on the Phoenix one? I don't know if there's any correlation between that and what we saw. I do know, Stacey, that these things do seem, for some reason, run in families. You say you were with your two brothers and your mother. I was with my mother-in-law, my wife, and my daughter on that night. There does seem to be some correlation between UFOs and families. I don't know why that is, whether it's to do with the DNA, something along those lines. I don't know, but it sounds like a fascinating story. And they do seem to be able to wipe your mind clear of what's gone on, which is why people use what it is now, regression to try and find out what took place. So the reason you can't remember seeing the triangle, I think possibly they've done something to stop you from remembering it. I know that sounds crazy, but you do hear this quite a lot. I mean, I think sometimes they put these little blockages into your mind to stop you remembering things for your own good, to be honest.
Are you the only one of the group, Colin, that has experienced any paranormal activity?
Since the UFO, yes. My daughter did see a ghost when she was younger, when she was at school. My mother-in-law never talked about the things that she's ever seen in her life. She's the one who's kept all the newspaper reports. So she obviously has been involved. It's maybe whatever it is passed down through my mother-in-law, through my wife, down to my daughter as well. We just don't know, do we? We don't know what they're up to.
No.
But if we go with David Jacobs' theories, then it's making hybrids out of aliens.
That's right. It's not good. I don't want to go with David. He's scary, isn't he?
It is scary, yeah. But one of the things that makes me wonder whether he's on the right lines is the fact that the alien agenda, whatever it is, they're keeping it from us. Now, obviously, the military know about these things. The government knows about it. Everybody's keeping it quiet from us. None of them are coming out and saying we're here. That makes me suspicious. That makes me wonder whether it is a bad thing that's going on. I don't know. I hope not.
Why do you take the interdimensional approach? Why can't you accept the fact that they may be coming from other planets within our galaxy?
Because of all the paranormal activity I had after the encounter. Like I say, if it had just been from another planet that had come 1,000 light years and I'd seen it and then it had gone away, then that would have been the end of it. But it's not the end of it. It's an ongoing thing. And I did have a sighting a couple of years ago. So it's like an ongoing thing as well. That's what's making me believe it's dimensional rather than extraterrestrial. I mean, there might be a possibility once we understand all this engineering, science, and it's just science we don't understand, perhaps we can pop across to another dimension, travel a little bit, pop out again, and we'll have travelled 1,000 light years in our own universe. So there's a possibility out there in our universe there are some human-type people who are advanced, more advanced than we are, say a million years more advanced. They may well be using different dimensions to travel the light years to get here. So we might have a mixture of aliens from our own universe as well as interdimensional beings.
Was writing the book, Colin, therapeutic for you?
Yes, it's been extremely interesting, to be honest. I've gathered a lot more information. I've got a lot of reports from over the years that I've collected anyway, which I put into the book. But then I asked people for reports from social media, and it was encouraging to see the amount of people that got in touch, and also the amount of people that have had also paranormal experiences as well as UFO experiences. That does seem to be becoming more and more the norm these days. People are more willing to talk about it than they used to. Plus, I did gain a lot of information from writing the book, all the different sightings. I've gone through it and made notes of some of the similarities, like the colour of the triangles and the lights and the noise, etc. There's a lot of information in the book for anybody who's interested in triangles, which I assume that a lot of the audience would be, hopefully.
What took you 24 years to write it?
I think because of the strangeness that took place. When I started writing the book, I talked about the encounter, and I talked about some of the local encounters that I've got from the newspapers, but it only came to 10,000 words. So I really needed to expand on that and take on board other people's sightings, and then it just seemed logical the way things have been going over the last few years to talk about the paranormal side of it. I was a bit hesitant when I did that because some of my family members, like my brothers and their wives, etc., don't know all of the details. But now I've written a book, they reading the details of the strange paranormal side of the events, and I guess it's only recently I've decided to come out of the closet about that sort of information. I think if I had come out with that 24 years ago, people would have thought I was totally crazy. If I'd come out with it a couple of hundred years ago, I'd be burned at the stake for being a witch.
Yeah, they would have.
I think it's now becoming more acceptable.
Indeed. Let's go to final calls for you. Let's go to Tammy in Spokane Valley, Washington. Tammy, thanks for calling.
Thank you, George. I love you. God bless you.
Thank you.
Hi, Colin.
Hi, Tammy.
How are you guys doing tonight?
Everything's good. What can we do for you?
Well, I just wanted to let Colin know, and you too, George. I went out on my patio. This was in 2007. I woke up, and like he says, you're just kind of drawn. I went to have a cigarette on my patio, and here's this triangle just right there, and no noise.
Just hovering right there.
Yeah, just sitting. I saw the bottom, and I saw the front of it. I didn't see the whole thing because it was huge. And what I don't understand is my complex condo. I was on the first floor. My patio was kind of sunken, and then there was some lawn, and then there was another condo across from that. But then I was on the end, so then there was a parking space and street, So, but what I don't understand is how this ship could be there so big and me not see that building. And I'm just sure there were cables there too, and not see those. So thought it was interesting. And I wondered, Colin, have you seen orbs, lights?
Orbs, Colin?
Yes, I have actually. Yeah, on many occasions I've seen them, and I've photographed quite a few over the years as well. Yeah, I don't know what these things are. Maybe they're observation probes that are coming down. But yes, I have seen orbs. A lot of people do talk about orbs. I have some reports in the book where people have seen these bright balls of light coming along, and then as it gets closer, they actually change into a triangle. So the triangle somehow seems to be given off the effect of being a big ball of light, when in fact it's a triangle within the light itself.
Did you design the cover of your book?
No, that's a guy in Canada did the computer-generated graphics for me. The bottom of the triangle is, like I say, based on the Belgium sighting. And
nice job.
His name is, the guy in Canada did some fantastic images for me. I think they're on your website. I did send those over to
absolutely.
you. And those images appear inside the book as well as pictures of my model that I made, the 3D model.
Where's the best place to get your book? Amazon?
It's available on Amazon, yes. It's a paperback, hardback, audio book, and available on Kindle as well. And for anybody who's seen the triangle, I would recommend buying it, not because I want to sell my book, but for the information that's in there. It will certainly make you feel more comfortable about the fact of what you've seen, that you're not the only person who's going through this. There's lots and lots of people see this. I've only scratched the surface with my 130 witnesses. I'm sure if I spent more time, I could get 1,000 witnesses from around the UK that have had close encounters with these things.
Let's go to Mark in Maryland.
Who's manufacturing these?
East of the Rockies. Mark, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Colin, your story sounds so enlightening and so touching and so compassionate. I'm so glad that you told it and waited until now to tell it. I've had some sightings myself. My question is this. You have the feeling that sometime, in the rest of your life, you think you'll ever see it again? You think the feeling will come about you where you'll be, compulsed to see it again?
Yes, I think so. I've got a feeling I will see it again. I'll get more information. And it'll probably be when I'm not expecting it. I do spend a lot of time looking at the sky. Whenever I'm out, I'm always looking up, trying to see if there's anything about. And I do believe at some point I will see some more, especially now I've written this book and made the models. I mean, you have to ask yourself, why did we have the encounter? I'm sure it was done on purpose. So what was the purpose? What was the intentions? The only thing I can think is I'm part of some subtle disclosure project without realising it, by writing the book and making the models and spreading the word, basically. But I'm sure this thing happened for a reason.
Do you wish you would have been taken aboard, Colin?
Yes. Me and my mother-in-law, we were desperate to get on board. She was as keen as I was. It was fantastic. I just wanted to see who they were. I don't like to call them aliens. I don't know, just let's call them humanoids, or I don't know what we should call them. But I also, like from an engineering point of view, the craft was absolutely incredible. And it was squeaky clean. There was no marks on it. It looked like it just come out of the showroom. Or I'd love to have got on board and to have a look around and see what made it fly, and to chat with the occupants on board as well. I think it would have been amazing, yeah. But my wife, my daughter, they weren't quite so keen. They were a bit scared by it, I believe. But me and my mother-in-law, yeah, we was full on. We wanted to get on board. If given the chance, we would have done.
Let's go to Dory in North Carolina. Dory, you are up with us. Go ahead.
Yeah, I need help. I feel like I'm crazy. Nobody around here talk to. I've been implanted since I was an infant. My mother in New York used to always see them in the backyard. We lived in the country. And it didn't dawn on me until 2000 when I lost my job. And I was looking at my foot and I saw a mark. And then later I saw another mark. And it's always with 3 dots like a triangle. And then a cut. That is not a cut of like surgical cut, but not. And they heal fast. And just when my mother died, I thought that little mark on my wrist was a birthmark. She always said it was a birthmark. It wasn't. It was where they implanted me. When my mother said she saw Abraham Lincoln floating across the room and touched my wrist.
How many implants do you think you have, Dory?
I have no idea, but the one in my wrist, when my mother died, they came back and took it out. I went to the dermatologist, and they looked at it, and they said, "Are you hurting yourself?" 3 tiny microscopic surgical cuts for each little dot. It wasn't a blur like a birthmark. It was 3 dots. When they came and took it out, it was predominant. You could see the 3 dots. Then they come every 7 years, 6 to 7 years. And then they just came this year. And there was 3 dots right above my knee. And I said, shoot, they came. And there was a black mark on the side of my knee, and like a black and blue mark. And they must have injected. It was a round, small mark.
Well, if we had the late Roger Lear with us, Colin, he would have been able to do something with her.
That's right, yeah. I met Dr. Roger Lear many years ago in the UK.
I miss him. Good guy.
But, yes, he was, yeah. I watched some of his YouTube videos where he's been removing implants out of people. It's quite fascinating to watch.
Cornelius is with us in Louisiana. Hello there, Mr. White.
Hey there, George and Colin. Boy, I tell you, y'all got some great callers and listeners. Colin, I was a correctional officer at the Federal Correctional Institute at Oakdale, Louisiana, and I saw something. We were on guard duty and stuff, and we have a mound that we would drive up. We didn't have like a guard tower, and it was way off in the woods because we were in the wooded area, and it shined a light down there at something. So I don't know exactly what it was. So I wanted to say to George, now Stan Freeman would have loved this. On News Nation, they're going to interview that Air Force guy that's a whistleblower.
Yep.
But you know what I found odd about that? He's got a paper where he can say what he can say, but the secret stuff he can't say. So I think that's awful odd. But at 8 o'clock on Sunday night, we are not alone. And I think that they're spiritual beings, not really physical. So it's like Satan's ships versus the Savior's ship. So I want to ask Colin, do he believe these are angels or fallen angels or God's angels versus the devil's angels? God bless you there, George and Colin.
Okay, Corny. I would guess you do not think they're angelic. Go ahead, Colin.
No. I've never really taken to religion, So I don't think these are angels, fallen angels. I do believe they're quite spiritual beings. We don't really know all of the answers yet, do we? We will do at some point. But from what I've gleaned over the last 24 years, the aliens themselves don't seem to be interested in God or religion. They seem to be very purposeful in what they are actually doing, which we don't know at the moment. But, yeah, I think they've been around for centuries. I mean, the earliest report I've got in my book is 1956, but I have come across a case of a triangle seen in Nuremberg in 1561. That's 462 years ago. So these beings have been around for a long time. Now, maybe years ago, when people were more inclined to believe in religion and that they took these to be either from the devil or from God, like that, so angels or devils workers. But I think as time's gone on, we've got a better idea that these are not really religious things that are taking place.
What do you think of the hybridization program, Colin, that appears to be underway?
It does. Like, you get so many reports of sperm and egg being taken from people that there's got to be some truth in that. And I'm sure it's been going on for a long time. Again, Dr. David Jacobs, I know he goes on the dark side of it, but some of the things he was saying, like, all of the tables that people are put on board ships, they're made for humans, the human size. They're not small or large for alien
Well, he's right about that.
Built for humans. And they are taking egg and they are taking sperm. And if what he was saying is correct, that the amount of abductions has slowed down now, and is that because they've got to the point in their agenda where something's going to happen? Have they got enough hybrids now to come down and mingle with us? I don't know. That would seem to be the logical thing that's taking place. But we don't know all the answers, do we, George, unfortunately?
No, but maybe we'll get them one day. What do you think of all this push towards disclosure now, Colin?
Yeah, I think it's going to come. I think disclosure is imminent. Whether it's going to be the aliens themselves that give us the disclosure or whether it'll be the governments, I think it'll probably be the aliens themselves eventually. I think it will come. But there's going to be some questions to be asked there, isn't there? You know, our government has known about it for such a long time. Why have they been hiding it from us? Are they protecting us? I mean, it must be very difficult for the government now to come out and say, yes, they've been around and we've had them since 1947, since Roswell. And, we've been lying to you all these years. And it's a difficult one, isn't it?
It sure is. Colin, thank you for being on the program, and good luck with the book, Triangular UFOs of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, George. I've enjoyed chatting with you. It's been great. It's been lovely.
You take care of yourself. Colin Saunders, and it's a remarkable book. What an incredible story, too. But a lot of people think they're interdimensional. I still think they're coming from other planetary systems way, way out there. But his website is linked up at coasttocoastam.com, and his book, of course, as you mentioned, you can get it on Amazon. The Coast mobile app is now available for download on iPhones and Android devices. You can become an insider directly through this app. This is a great option for our international listeners, and new users will also receive a free 2-week trial.